Want to give a quick shout out to all of my patrons. Thank you so much for all of the continued support. And I am done. Okay, so I just got done reading And Then There Were None. And this is by Agatha Christie. And I want to give you my unedited thoughts on finishing this book, which was just right now. So yeah, not a fan. Not a fan. I'm going to give this one 2 stars. And I almost feel like I'm being generous with my 2 stars, but it's so short. And there were moments that I liked. So looking at a percentage of the book that I liked, I can't give it, I hated it. But I definitely didn't like anything here. There's some major problems here from an all-time classic and one of the highest selling books in history. And I just can't really forgive them. I am going to be talking spoilers here. I don't think I can talk about this book without them. And part of the reason that I'm going to break up my normal format is because this book is so old and so much of a classic that I almost feel like it's talking about something like Lord of the Rings, where you've either read it or you're not going to read it. I don't think I'm, spoiling anything for anybody by talking about this. And so many different forms of media and the mystery genre in general has copied what has gone on here, that, yeah, there's nothing truly unique here, at least nowadays. And back when this came out, I'm sure it was incredibly unique. But so why am I reading an extremely old mystery story? Well, because I have to, because this is what somebody chose from the my TBR contest. So in my TBR contest, if you win twice, you get to pick any book you want for me to read. And I might veto a book that's not a fantasy book, but a book that's so short like this, yeah, why not? I'll give it a shot, especially a classic. But I was never going to like this thing. I don't like classic books. It's just not my preference. And I get that it makes me seem kind of dumb. Maybe I am. Maybe I am. Probably am, right? But I don't have an appreciation for him. And maybe that, I love that people do, but I just don't see it. I don't understand it. And ultimately when I am these books, I look at it going, I just want to read more modern books, or at least relatively modern, that's learned from these things in the past and, in my opinion, improved upon them. And yeah, so that's a little background for this book. Let's talk a little bit about the plot. So the plot. You got these 10 strangers. They're lured to this Indian island by a mysterious host. Once the guests have all arrived, the host accuses each person of murder. It's a rather intriguing intro to the story, even though it's been done since then quite a bit. What instantly came to mind was the movie Clue, which I had seen many times in the past growing up. An old girlfriend of mine in high school, this was like her favorite movie and made me watch it a bunch. So it's Clue very clearly just copied and ripped off this book. And not like a ripped off in the sense of like plagiarism, ripped off, and I think that it was like satiring it very, very intentionally, and wanted everybody to know that it was copying it in a comedic format. But it's a very intriguing beginning to the story. It grabs you, and you want to know why these 10 characters are all getting mixed together. And as soon as the host comes on this gramophone, I think it's a gramophone, and accuses them all of murder in different ways. It's not like murder, first-degree murder. It's all this, maybe it is, maybe I don't know my degrees, but it's like negligence, it's like, a doctor almost intentionally didn't provide the right service to one of his patients. A guy in the military, sent a guy to the front lines that he didn't like, knowing that he'd probably die, that kind of stuff. And each of the characters is outwardly denying these accusations. And very quickly on, somebody dies, and you realize if you didn't realize it by then, this is going to be a murder story, and you instantly link it because at the beginning of the story, you learn this poem, and I guess it's probably a famous poem, but it's the poem is 10 Little Indians. That's not the original name of the poem, nor the original. So the book before this was named 10 Little Indians. That is not politically correct anymore. That is way more politically correct than the original name of this book, which I am not going to say. Look it up if you want. But in this story, it's like, I have not memorized the poem at all, but it's like 10 little Indians, went to the store. One, fell down the stairs, and then there were 9, but it rhymes. I totally messed that up. And then there were 4. And each of them are dying in a different way. And when the first person dies in accordance with the poem and how the first person dies, you know now that all the 9 of the rest of them are going to die in this specific order and how they're going to die. But I am giving this 2 stars instead of 1 star because the plot really did set things up nicely and it kept a lot of the tension going along with the story. It was fun to try to figure out which of the people was the killer, and trying to keep notes and piece together the mystery is entertaining. But the execution of this great setup is where it all falls apart. So before we go into the major problems I had with this book, let's first talk about the sponsor of this video. Have you ever felt particularly exhausted or uninspired at work? Now, while I love the job that I currently have, it wasn't always that way, and I would constantly see others in roles that looked far more exciting than the mundane work that I was doing at the time. And personally, when I was back then daydreaming, what I thought of as my dream job was always associated with my favorite pastime, aside from reading, which is watching sports, which I am just purely obsessed with. I would also think about how amazing it would be to be able to work in the sports industry, and that reality starts with the education and connections you could get in the Southern New Hampshire University Sports Management Program, who is sponsoring this video. Southern New Hampshire's university's online sports management program lets you turn a passion of sports into a degree. You'll learn about the business and economics of sports, sports management principles, and how to gather and analyze data. This degree can help prepare you for a career as an athletic director, sports informations director, marketing manager, and other exciting roles in the sports industry. You'll be able to tap into SNHU's network of graduates working in sports-related organizations, and you'll be able to take advantage of an internship or a learning course within the field. Your courses are taught by faculty with real-world experience, so you'll have opportunities to connect with people in the industry. And when you graduate, SNHU will still be there to help you as you begin your job hunt. Go to snhu.edu/fantasybook, also linked in the description, to see if you qualify for SNHU's sports management program. You might be eligible for financial aid or have previous college credits that could fast track your degree at SNHU. Click the link to get started. All right, let's move on. So problem number 1. I don't know how many problems I have. I'm coming off this at the top of my head like I always do. But one of them was what I'm going to call the red herring. So are you familiar with what a red herring is? So maybe it's not the perfect definition, but a red herring is where something is diverting you from the real thing that's going on. If you're doing a escape room, for example, there will be many red herrings around the room where it's like, follow this clue, but it's not actually anything. It's just like this other thing. Well, in this book, one of the, in the poem, I think it's the 5th person that dies because they ate a red herring. Now, upon reading that, instantly, I assume most people, at least if you know what this is, and I think most people know what a red herring is. Maybe people didn't know what it was back then, but certainly people know what a red herring is now. You're like, okay, that didn't happen. What's going on with this red herring in the 5th person? Because that didn't actually happen. Maybe that's where it came from. Maybe this is the origination of what a red herring is. But knowing that, you know right away who the killer is. And that sucks, right? This is a mystery story, and the fun is in trying to figure it out, and you already know who did it. Or at least you know that something's up with the 5th person. That, I cannot tell you how much that ruins the tension of this story and severely harms it. Now, it is certainly possible that a red herring was not what the current definition is when this book was written. And if that's the case, then this probably would have been a lot more exciting had you read it when this first came out. But in 2024 reading this, it definitely harms things. Now, there's no way to actually figure it out. It's a book with a weird ending. You cannot, outside of the red herring thing, which is just very strange, especially if you're reading this when it first came out, you cannot predict what the ending's going to be. It's entirely implausible. And that's what a bad mystery story does. A good mystery story is when you finally get the big reveal and it makes you go, oh, I'm dumb. I should have realized that. There were clues. I should have picked up on them. It's part of what makes Brandon Sanderson such an intriguing writer for so many people, because he has these big reveals, but they're almost never out of nowhere. He's laying things out. And when you finally realize it, it makes you feel dumb. That is good writing. This one is bad writing. Now, Agatha Christie is a incredible author. She is, lauded as one of the most influential authors of all time. I get it. I'm not saying she is a bad writer. I'm saying that the plot device that she used, the way that she tied things together, was a bad device in storytelling. And it's possible that this sort of book wasn't written, But although Sherlock Holmes certainly was written before this, and he did it the right way, or whoever wrote it, I forgot, was it? I don't want to say it wrong. Whoever wrote that, was it Fleming or somebody? And so clearly it's been done before, but it was not good. And so let me just ruin it for you. At the end of the book, you're like, what happened? Who killed him? You kind of know that it's the fifth person, or they're involved in it because of the red herring thing, but how? Well, you find out that because he got a gunshot to the head, and when he gets a gunshot to the head and people come see him, they're like, okay, he's dead. Turns out he wasn't dead. Turns out he faked the gunshot wound and wasn't dead. Huh? Like, what? You can't fake a gunshot wound to the head. Maybe nowadays with like really expensive plastic, like if you had like a team of people putting on like a thing for a movie or something. But this is just a single dude on an island without anything, putting on some ketchup on your head or something and isn't going to really come off like a gunshot wound. And, the people that move your body are going to know that you're alive still, because your body's still warm and, you're not dead. You're breathing and you have a pulse. It's bad. And so when it happens, you're like, that's dumb. That's really dumb. I don't like that. It's almost like it's like taunting the reader. It's like, you'll never guess what happens. Yeah, no crud. Nobody did. Literally 0 people called that that's what happens, and that's not good writing. Sorry. Now, there is good writing in this book. There are moments in this book from a writing perspective that I think she knocked it out of the park, especially as we get towards the latter half of the book. There are some wonderfully tense moments. One in particular where the characters, after many of them have been knocked off, they all know that somebody in the room is the killer, although the killer's already dead, or the killer's already, not in the room anymore because he's the guy that shot himself in the head or got shot in the head, fake. But everybody thinks that another character in the room is the killer, but they're all acting on the exterior nice and calm and cool and collected, but they go through each of their heads and they're freaking out. It's good stuff. It's really, really high quality stuff. And I've really never read anything quite like it before. Joe Abercrombie plays around with this a lot, where he does a lot of internal monologue, and these characters will be saying something, but internally thinking something, totally on the opposite end. But it was really fun to read in this. And, it does bring up a problem I had. It's not a major problem, but that the characters didn't react the way that anybody would react to these murders happening. Because it's crazy traumatic and horrific, but they keep so calm and like, oh, let's diligently try to figure out what's going on. And, everybody stay cool and let's No, that's not how anybody would react in this situation. It'd be a horror, moment, and you wouldn't be able to handle it cool or collected at all. But, that's fine. There are some interesting choices in the writing style, I'll say. And I don't think it's a sign of the times. I think it's a sign of Agatha Christie. But she really likes exclamation marks. And I'm not talking exclamation marks when characters are yelling, because that makes sense. It's the narrator, omniscient, I can't say words today. But that narrator who's the one in the background who's explaining things, it uses exclamation marks all the time. I did a search for how many exclamation marks there are in this book, and it's like pages and pages and like entries and entries and entries of these exclamation marks. It's a very odd choice. And so, yeah, as a book in a human nature and how people react to bad situations, there's some merit to this book. In a but as a mystery novel, it fails. It ruins the tension. It doesn't deliver on the promise that I feel like is being sold to the reader when you're reading a mystery story, and the way that a proper mystery story should end. And, I think that some people, are going to say, yeah, just because you didn't get it, Matt, doesn't mean that other people didn't get it. And that's BS. It wasn't written in a way that anybody could. The clues aren't left. And it's too problematic for me to, be able to possibly like this book, or even think it's just like, okay. And especially for a short book. I mean, this ending should have knocked it out of the park. There were endings that I was thinking while reading this, and that I suspect most people are thinking when they're reading this. They all have their pet theories and what's going on. Because if you're doing it, I think, the right way, your brain's just working in overdrive. Like, what is happening? Clearly this person didn't do it. Clearly they didn't do it. Is it not even somebody there? Is there somebody behind the scenes? The puppet master behind the scenes? But there's endings to this that I feel like could have knocked it out of the park. And there's like very little things that could have changed that would have made this from a 2-star from me into like a 4-star or more. And it's disappointing that those decisions were made. So I know that this is going to be a wildly unpopular opinion. I'm okay with it because it's just my opinion. And I can't change who I am or what my opinion is. It's just what I feel. So that is it for me. Hope you enjoyed this review. And as always, happy reading to you. Thanks again to all my patrons, with a special shout out to my Ascendant tier and Librarian tier patrons: Anna G, CJ, Doused, Darren, Gregory, Jonathan, Nathan T, Nev's Book Channel, 𝗟𝗶𝗸𝐻𝐸, Ron Reich, Russell, Ryan L, Sydney Baker, 𝗪𝐶, Tahir, Anna, Andra, Blair, Brock, Evan, Fanixan, Harry B, Joe, Cat Mick, Michael Sugarman, Philippe, Sky, TW57, Wacky, and Zion. Thanks for sticking to the end of this video, and if you want to watch some more content from my channel, click over here and I've got some good videos for you. Thanks so much.